Pop of the morning, everyone, and welcome to Popcorn Culture. As always, I'm your one true host, Jazzy J, joined as usual by my brother, the one true co-host, Buzzy Benjamin B. Ben, how are you doing today?
Just truly splendiferous. Truly great.
Yeah?
Yeah, we just got back from a week-long vacation at the beach.
We sure did.
Which I must say, like, wow, I mean, it was awesome. Great week with the whole fam and everything. However, adjusting to vacation life with 7 children,
yes,
it's a brand new ball game.
It is a brand new ball game for sure. This one, I think it's the first one where we haven't had anyone who, well, I wouldn't say like newborn. I guess Holden is still under a year old, so never mind. Still had a newborn on the trip.
We still had, yeah, still had a newborn.
But we had 6 mostly mobile kids wandering around the house and beach. For the duration of the week, and it was definitely a very I don't know. I would actually say, because we've been to the beach several times now with kids in tow, and this isn't even like the twins' first voyage to the beach either. But I would say that, like, I feel like somewhere along the way in the past year or so, at least in my family, I feel like we have crossed a bridge in terms of travel where it suddenly feels way more possible and the kids are much more like self-contained. I mean, Nick and Nate are still like only 3, so they're not like, completely independent or anything, but there was like, in past trips, if they were, you felt uncomfortable, like, where are they in the house? Like, I need to probably have an eye on them. They might be doing something dangerous.
Right.
Or not something they know was dangerous, but just something that could hurt them. And this trip, it was very different. It was like, oh yeah, if we're in the house, you can pretty much be anywhere. And I trust the 3 of you not to be in mortal peril.
Right, yes. Which is something that I feel like Addie is definitely just getting her own sea legs. And I felt like maybe I'm not quite across that bridge yet, where the number one game that Addie seemed to figure out, like, essentially on day one, was that the beach house that we had was able to house all 15 of us, so 8 adults and 7 children.
Yep.
And part of that was possible because there was a bunk room,
yes,
where at the very least your 3 boys and potentially Olivia as well, our niece, would be able to sleep. And inside of that bunk room were ladders that would go to the top bunk. Yeah, which Addie absolutely loves her some stairs, and so she would go up and down the stairs. Then finally, not even finally, very quickly did she discover that not only up the stairs, but then into the bunk room and up the ladder.
Yes. And into the bunk bed.
And
yes,
so I felt like the number of different moments where it was like, no, where's Addie? And I know exactly where she is.
Right.
And like,
yeah.
So there was literally one moment where I was like, so I could go sprinting, like upstairs just to make sure she's okay. And she's halfway up the ladder and she just turns her head to look at me, just like this huge grin. So fortunately, I actually had my phone out, so I even have like a picture of her like midway up the ladder.
It's a pretty funny picture.
Yeah, it was like, but oh man, I was having this total. We were talking about it last week a little bit, and so I was trying to be really good, and I practiced a whole bunch of this, but we talked about catastrophizing.
Yeah,
and so in my head, my instinct the whole weekend was like, at some point in time, there's going to be a thump. There's going to be that sound of one of the kids falling off the top bunk.
Oh, right.
And I was trying really hard to to quiet that voice in the back of my mind, being
right,
like, it's okay. They're all right. They're doing okay. They're being careful. But obviously, I mean, Addie's still like 19 months old, so she's still small enough to where I don't know that I can completely trust her to not be causing mayhem. But in the meantime, though, she absolutely. I mean, it was wild and so endlessly interesting. To see the impact of Addie spending so much time around other small children.
Yeah.
Like, her vocabulary, like, exploded.
Really?
In the past week. Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
So, like, we've been doing, like, all these, like, different little, gesture activities and stuff like that with her, where she's been, like, like, where are your eyes? And she can, like, point to, her eyes. Like, where's your hair? And she'll, like, grab her head, or, like, where's your feet? And, like, but, like, literally, like, halfway through the week, she was just like, mouth. It was like, what did you just say?
What did you say?
Nose, eyes, hair, hat. Like,
right.
It was like, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is wild.
Unlocking it. Yeah, it's crazy what, like, socialization with other, kids your age or nearby.
Right.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Can do.
It definitely feels like I can see where, and people say this, but like, if you do have like an older sibling, like I feel like you do develop a little bit faster because you have that like working example of like sort of like leapfrogging you ahead forward on some of the big things. So that was really interesting, and it was really cool just to even like see her be old enough to be able to like play, like truly play with the other kids.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really fun seeing Luke, play too. I think he in particular, I think was good at like playing with Addie and then with Holden. I think he really liked like being the oldest kid there and then playing with like the little kids.
Yes.
And like entertaining them. And stuff. So it was fun, like when I would look over and like see him, because I rarely get to see him like at school interacting with just other kids without him like being hyper aware of your presence or anything.
Right.
So it's fun to just like watch him in like a natural environment, just like what are you gonna do? How do you act when you don't think I'm watching? You know?
Yes, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
it was so funny too because I feel like he is of an age where it's like he's actually able to like definitely and for me to see it as well, it was really interesting. Like think more creatively than I would expect. So like there was one point in time where I was literally hanging out in the living room, and I had been in there for like 30 minutes time or something, you know, just like interacting or going in. And I'm sure that other things happened, but I guess at some point in time they were playing hide and seek, and Luke was hiding so well, and like all of a sudden like appeared from underneath this like coffee table wicker basket container thing, and I was like, how long were you there?
Oh
like,
man, Luke is good at hide and seek. There's
he was crushing
no
it.
doubt. Yeah.
Absolutely crushing it. He just popped out of nowhere.
Just popped out of nowhere. Yeah, he's got a creative mind for it, and he's like small enough to just fit in tons of little spaces and stuff. And so sometimes, like when you're playing, I think he likes being found a lot of the time. So like if he's like under a blanket or something nearby, he'll just like start laughing, and it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty easy.
Where's Luke?
Yeah, but there are times where he'll just find a spot, and you're like, man, that was so good.
You know, this is funny though, because it also reminds me of when we were kids and we would go to our grandparents' house and play hide and seek, and the complete and utter lack of respect for like our grandparents' spaces.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember as a small child, because it was like similar to both of us were, but similar to Luke in that we were like really small frame and could like fit in tight spaces and stuff. And I remember like, you know, one Christmas, all of us and the cousins were playing hide and seek, and I would like literally run in trying to find like, you know, that place you haven't thought of before.
Right.
And would go to like their clothing hamper.
Yeah.
Take everything out of it.
Right.
Get inside of the clothing hamper.
Sure.
And it's like, I can't imagine what it was like for grandma and grandpa to come up at the end of the day and be like, why are all of my clothes not
On the floor?
Yeah, like
What's going on here?
What's going on here? But like, I mean, with zero regard for anything, it was just like, well,
Right.
take all these out so I can get in.
Right. This whole home is my play place, and I will treat it as I see fit.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny because I can even remember being in the driver's seat in that moment of my thoughts, being like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is nothing to be
It's
worried
fine.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely it's cool to watch the kids definitely like go from being so small to the point where they were sort of just like, you know, like you need to like really like attend to them and then watch them like entertain themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the other part of it I feel like is a different milestone I reached on this particular trip was like accepting maybe like the death of my old vacation self, if you will.
Yeah, interesting.
Where it's like, you know, I've been on plenty of vacations with Luke and Nick and Nate at this point, but before that, I obviously went on tons of vacations with the family where as soon as you get there, you're just like, you're in vacation mode. You're old enough, you can just do whatever you want. You're in complete, you know, go play here, go do that, sit on the chair, be by yourself, play with everyone, whatever.
Right.
You know, like when you're a kid at the beach, it's amazing.
Even like the first couple of years like out of college when we go on these beach trips and like, you know, you would get out there and nobody had kids yet, and it was like it would not have been uncommon for me to have the full expectation for myself to read not like one book but like multiple books.
Oh yeah.
Like I plan to sit my butt in the chair for like 6 hours a day,
right?
You know, in front of the ocean.
Do whatever I want. I got all the relaxation in the world. I can tell you that I read exactly 0 pages of anything while I was at the beach this year.
Well done. Well done. Yeah.
Yep. But I think I just like over time, you know, those first couple times you're there and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to relax. Like I'm like when I'm at the beach, I'm trying to have fun. It's like now every time I try and have fun, I got to go take care of this baby, or I got to hold him, or I got to feed him, or I got to change a diaper, or go do bedtime. And it's like, like when am I supposed to be having any fun? And I think slowly over time that like expectation has just eroded away, and I feel like that it is completely gone. That mountain has been just destroyed.
Wow.
It's just gone.
Impressive.
And on the flip side though, it's not the tragedy you think though, where it's like, oh man, that's just it. Vacations aren't fun anymore. It was just this like turning the corner onto this new road where it was like the point of the vacation is just to play with the kids. Like that was all I wanted to do at any point. Like my having fun will be at the will come from playing with them, and that is how I am planning to have fun on this trip. It is not like I'm not here for my own enjoyment. I'm here to play with them, and that is what's going to make me happy. And I feel like that going in, just sort of like, I don't think I even like consciously thought that. It was just sort of like, this is my expectation now going in. And it just like, I feel like it just made like a whole world difference. Like I remember being on vacations in the past where I've just felt like horribly stressed and just like upset and like unable to place like why it's there. And I think that's probably what it was. It was just sort of like, yeah, I'm supposed to be on vacation. I'm supposed to be having fun. Like I'm not. I'm just working all the time. And it's just like I wasn't even expecting any of that this time. It was just I'm just here and I'm just going to play with the kids as much as possible. And that's what I did. And it was like just such a better trip all around. I feel like it was probably like the best beach vacation I've had in like 5 years or something.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
Yeah,
I mean it's such a big development step forward. But you're definitely right. We did some cool stuff on this trip as well, where I did feel like big shout out to mom and dad, by the way, who were incredibly helpful with the kiddos. But we also got to go and while we were there, we rented jet skis.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, to go on like the intercoastal waterway. So if you can imagine like the way that the Holden Beach is situated, it is like an island that is like maybe like 200 yards from land. And so there's a big strip of water that goes in between like the island itself that is like with all the oceanfront properties and all the rest of like the houses and everything.
Yeah.
And then like just the mainland. So this like inner area or the intercoastal, you can go and like we rented the jet skis and we were able to like get out there and just like kind of let them rip.
Absolutely let them rip. Yeah.
And this was so fun because I feel like jet skis were one of those things that to me for the longest time, I always felt it was like illegal to be on one. This was my first time ever being on a jet ski ever. Was that the same for you? I think that I had been on one as like a middle schooler where I was a passenger, but I certainly had never been in the driver's seat. And really, I would even say that on that occasion, it was just far enough to be brought out into the middle of the lake so I could hop in the water and get on like a tube to go tubing.
Right. Okay.
So like I had never been like full speed on one or like, cut turns or done some figure eights or anything like that.
Righto. Yeah. So I went in complete, jet ski virgin, never been on one at all in any capacity. And it was like, we signed up to go do it and I knew we were going to be able to do it. And, that it would, I really didn't know what to expect other than I feel like for some reason, or not for some reason, but my entire life, like the description of jet skis is that they are a kind of fun that seems like it's outside the normal rules of fun or something. Like everyone who talks about jet skis is like, oh my God, it's the best thing in the whole world. Like not only is it super fun, but it's even more fun than that. Like, and then you think you know what I'm talking about, but you don't have any idea. I feel like I've heard comedians do bits about just like, no, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy a jet ski.
Right.
So you're wrong. So you can buy happiness. It's like you watch Loki and it's like Owen Wilson's character, Mobius. He's just like, you know what? I'm this weird automaton in this futuristic timeless space. And the only thing I care about is jet skis.
Right.
Everything about jet skis my entire life has been described to me as they're basically the most fun you can actually have, but actually.
Yeah.
But I'm not being hyperbolic here, actually. And so I was going in I feel like it's made me nervous to do it. I'm like, I'm never going to ride jet skis for the first time again. Or what if I do this and it's not fun? Or what if I'm too afraid to go fast? Or, what if the waves are just really choppy? Or what if I fall,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the what if you fall thing was definitely something on the back of my mind as well, because the area of water that you're in is primarily occupied by fishing vessels and shrimping boats and stuff like that are going and bringing fresh seafood in for the island. And so it's there are sharks in these waters. Literally in my mind. I'm like, it's when you're out in the ocean, it's surely there are sharks somewhere. In the intercoastal, it's like they are everywhere in my mind. I'm like, because like surely they're throwing like chum in the water.
That is so interesting because I think Beth had like the same fear. She's like, like there could be sharks down there. And I'm like my fear of crashing has nothing to do with wildlife.
Okay. It was just like the impact with the water.
The impact with the water, or like harming the machine, or just the embarrassment of crashing or something.
Right.
Or any of that. There was no concern of mine was that if I crash, I will be attacked by sharks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
One less thing to worry about.
One less thing.
Yeah. I feel like this was, I was having a conversation with our buddy Mike in response to last week's episode where we were again talking about catastrophizing type stuff. And I was like, sometimes you need to be a little bit informed to properly catastrophize, because you can't fear sharks if you never even considered it before.
Exactly.
And so like, if anything, that's better.
Yeah. Well, we asked the guy beforehand too, or someone asked him,
you are right.
Like, are there sharks? And he was like, no.
Yeah. He was like, dolphins maybe. And I was like, well, where there's dolphins, could there be sharks?
Yeah.
So I was like, my mind was still trying to like fight against it, but totally let go of that. So then all that being said though, so you had these high expectations for what jet skiing was going to be like. Did you feel like it was like,
I think so I got out there and I was a little like there's like I wanted some time to get used to it a little bit, like how fast does this go, how do you turn, what is the braking like, and then I think the other thing was like being concerned like how will like the wakes, or like how will it handle like the any like wakes or bigger drifts in the water or something. Like, will you get airborne? Will you just sort of coast over them? Like, how do you, because we've been in boats before out on like Lake Champlain on like a choppy day, and I remember like sitting on the front of a boat and like hanging on for dear life as you just like thumped and thumped back onto the water. And I was like, if it's like that, I'm not gonna have any fun.
Right. Yeah. Especially imagining doing this at the ocean, but the water was pretty calm, and most of the things that you could run into were just caused by other boats.
Yeah, were just caused by other boats. So I think I had like a 100-yard stretch where I was just sort of getting used to it. The one thing that was like tripping me up at first was sort of the wind, because like I felt like as I was going, like you could just sort of feel the wind blowing you, and I was like, oh, okay, so you're just gonna turn into the wind a little bit here. But it did not take long at all for me to just send it like full throttle, pull the trigger as hard as I could, and just like let it rip.
Yeah. And that I think is where jet skis just truly excel in a way that almost every other motorized activity can't. Which like it's like you get your driver's license, for example, or even I've even thought about this before, because like I grew up really admiring and liking like we were really into like Hot Wheels as a kid. So like when I got old enough to the point where it was like I could like look at a car on the road and be like, oh, I would really like that, or like I would watch like videos or Top Gear or whatever, and it'd be like, oh, this car like the new Subaru WRX STI can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or something like that. It'd be like, whoa. But then like there's also the reality of the fact that there are like rules of the road. There are other drivers. You're not just like in like what I've always wanted to do in a car is just literally go into like the world's largest parking lot where there are no anythings, and I can like rip donuts and just go as fast as I can, and then like turn the wheel and drift, and like they're all the things that like I say you want to do, assuming that everybody else also wants to do these things.
Of course.
But maybe they don't. Maybe nobody else has ever aspired to this. Like when I watched Tokyo Drift, I was like, I can't wait to go and find a parking garage that surely won't mind if I drift all the turns.
Right. Like, if I try hard enough, I could probably find this happening in my local area.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this is accomplishable. And then it's like, no, it's not. Like and when you're in a car, it's like, it doesn't matter how fast it can go 0 to 60, because realistically, like you shouldn't be launching off of,
there's no situation where you're going from parking to 60, like unless you pull over on the side of the road and you get back in your car, and now you need to get back up to speed or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, and then, so there's so many circumstances where like the idea of like being able to like just go fast or just go like play, it's like, well, within reason. But then I feel like with the jet skis, it was just like, no, you can pretty much just go.
You can just go
rip it. And I mean, obviously use caution and don't feel like everything is possible. And there is the ability to flip them and stuff like that, which they warned us about. But, it was about as much like just being on like just like a complete playground as an adult with a vehicle that can go 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, you could, they got up to speed real quick.
Yes.
And I think I sort of had this extra, I don't know if I think this was a like protection or like just like a knowledge gap or something, but it seemed like some of the jet skis we had on were set to like, you could see the speedometer or whatever, and some were set to miles per hour and some were set to kilometers per hour.
Oh, sure.
And so mine was set to kilometers per hour. So like, I wasn't like doing the mental math for what is the miles per hour on it, you know?
Right.
I was like, I don't necessarily know how fast I'm going, meaning I don't have like a good sense of like, is this dangerous or something? You're like, what's 86 kilometers per hour? I don't know. Is that, you know?
Yeah. How do you do that translation?
Yeah.
Roughly 50 something?
Yeah, it's like 55 or something, somewhere between 50 and 55. So, which I figured it out after the fact. That was about as fast as I got going, was 86 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
So, and that was, you know, just letting it rip full throttle on the flat water and like trying to even duck my head down to make myself a little more aerodynamic or something.
Exactly. Yep.
But what I thought was really funny is I think, the six of us went. It was me, you, Beth, Alice, Tyler, and Emily. And I think everyone had a blast, but when we finished it, Beth was asking wait, did any of you guys like go like pull the trigger all the way? And like every single person was like, yes.
Yeah, it was
and she was like, what? That did not even occur to me.
Right, like yeah. I thought that was really funny because I was like, there I was feeling like I kept almost waiting for like the other shoe to drop, so to speak. Like, you know, we got out there and was like, we rented them, we had them for an hour, like, you know, like is somebody going to tell me at some point in time that like I'm not allowed to have fun, or that like I need to like do it differently, or someone's gonna be like, I'm sorry, we actually can't let you out there, or something like that. And it was just like this is just happening.
Here we go.
We're just doing this here. Alice looked at me and she was like, I think that might be the happiest I've seen you in years. I was like, it was pretty fun.
Do you know what it reminded me a lot of as I was doing it was when we were kids at Grandma and Grandpa's and we could ride the 3-wheeler around.
Yes.
Because they have just this big giant field in the back of their yard, or not yard, it's just like their backyard. Their farm, that's the right word. They have a just farm, and you would there was like just like one little path on the back, like a lot of it was kind of bumpy and stuff, but there was one track and you could just set the 3-wheeler on it and you could push it full throttle.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know how fast the thing could go. I don't think, probably more than like, you know, 15 miles an hour or something, but maybe a little faster. I don't know. But when you were a kid, it felt like you were going, you know, just the knowledge that you were pushing this thing as fast as it could go was like amazing.
Yes.
And you just felt like you were king of the world, ripping down that, and you're outside, you're in a field, you're on a piece of machinery, you know.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that there is a strong possibility that since we were riding on the 3-wheelers as kids, or the 3-wheeler, the singular one, that like I have basically been spending most of my adult life trying to do everything that I can to find myself in a position where I can have that freedom. Once again. Like I would almost say like just about every decision that I've made is like maybe not like on the surface incredibly obvious, but below the surface. What I'm always trying to do is find myself back in a position where I can recapture that magic.
To being on the 3-wheeler. So like, you know, like several years ago now, I think back in 2020, Allie and I bought like a piece of land that we hope to like build a house on, you know, sometime in the next few years. And one of the big things about like purchasing it is that I was like, I am one step closer. Like once I have it, there is no one who can stop me from building a trail and buying a 3-wheeler. And I'm like just getting up in the morning and being like, before I even have coffee, like I'm gonna go take a lap. I'm gonna go take a lap on the 3-wheeler, man.
I'll go warm it up for you.
Yeah, I will say I did eventually crash the 3-wheeler in the lamest way possible.
Yeah, it kind of like ran over you while you were on it.
Well, it was like this situation where like it was the summer like after I'd had that like pectus bar surgery.
Yeah.
So I was like fresh off of that, but it had been long enough that I could like walk around and basically act normal again. But like mom was, you know, understandably nervous that this was going to affect my my riding, you know.
Isn't it like so much more apparent now that you are a parent? The way in which you would be like, he just had surgery. I'm not sure if he should be on a motorized vehicle that is famous for flipping.
Right, yeah. No, I don't even think you could buy a 3-wheeler now. Or certainly somewhere sells them, or you could get one like, I bet Grandpa would just give you the one he has. I'm sure it's still in perfect working order. Yeah. But
I bet that's true.
I bet that's true, and I'm sure it would make him super happy to know it was still being put to use. But yeah, it's not like you would just be so much better off having like an ATV or a 4-wheeler or something.
Yeah.
They can probably go faster and are safer.
It even feels like when it comes to 3-wheelers, putting the single wheel in the back always seems like it makes more sense to me, because if you turned a 3-wheeler with the front wheel too quickly, it's
just immediately going to tip.
It's not even hard to imagine why it will tip.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense completely.
Yeah. You definitely had to like slow it down to turn.
Right. Yes.
And then immediately pick it right back up to speed.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I do remember but I remember the worry dripping into me as well. Like I need to take it a lot slower, and I think the act of going slower made me worse at riding. And then I went off the course, and there was it's bumpy off the course, and then the bumps threw me off, and whatever. So there was that.
The thing I remember about that was the first time I had ever seen the application of gauze. And ever since then, I feel like I've been certain that the gauze made it worse. But I feel like what happened was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you were riding, and if you can imagine, your front tire, you're sitting on the saddle, and then there's the 2 wheels that are like beneath your hips, so to speak. And it seemed like what happened was you came off, and your right or left leg basically got stuck underneath one of the tires, which then as it spun, basically took a layer of skin off of the back of your leg.
Yeah. I think I was wearing flip-flops, and the flip-flop got stuck in the tread, and it got almost sucked under or something.
Yeah.
I don't really remember it. It happened pretty quick.
Right.
All things considered, I was pretty okay, other than having a little rubber burn on the entire backside of my leg.
which is just painful.
Oh, it's just painful. It just burns. Yeah.
It's just stinging, bad sunburn. But,
yeah.
Anyway, but I always remember, your leg being coated in Vaseline and then wrapped in gauze, and I was always when you pull the gauze off,
it just looks so gross.
It's gonna hurt so bad. Just that little extra stick.
Yeah.
Anyway, wounds aside. But yeah, so was there? So this is the Ben problem. I'll present to you, which is that so I feel like getting off the jet skis, I was I need to be sure that I have more access to this immediately.
Oh,
did you have any of that, or were you kind of I'm fine if this is a vacation thing?
I don't we don't have if we had a lake house and didn't own a jet ski, I would have been we obviously have to get some of these because those are super fun.
Right.
But as someone who doesn't even who we don't have a lake house, and I mean you have a boat, but we don't have boats. I wouldn't mind going to the lake and renting jet skis or something on the weekend, but I'm not in my mind, owning a jet ski is certainly not a priority at the moment, because one, where would I keep it and when would I use it? And the infrastructure just doesn't exist for me to even want to own a jet ski.
I know. Yeah. And this is the cart before the horse analogy.
Yeah.
That I always find myself stuck in, which is I feel like I'm always trying to, I feel like I'm always trying to manifest the ability to be at the lake all the time and always. And I feel like where we live in Roanoke, Virginia is 45 minutes away from a man-made lake called Smith Mountain Lake. And it's a really fantastic lake area, and it has a whole lake life vibe, and it's lots of cool houses have been built around it, and there's it's an awesome, very readily accessible place to us. But as kids, the boat that I have now was Grandpa's boat, and so it was whenever we got to use the boat, it was always in Vermont. It was always 12 hours away from us, which meant that it was it was so foreign to me to even consider a world where I was in the state of Virginia in a boat.
Right.
It was no, I'm in a boat in Vermont.
Right.
But then that was prohibitively far away.
Right.
Which has always been the big problem. If it was closer, I feel when summer started, I would just live there for the summer.
Right.
And just this is just my life now.
Oh man. Oh, for sure. If we lived in Vermont, every weekend would be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so the issue we have now, and even when I brought the boat home, I do remember the first time that I got up on the skis behind the boat in Virginia, I was this is wild.
Right.
The best feeling ever. I could not believe it's here. It's so close. But now my big dilemma is that it's I always think about the lake, and I'm would I move to the lake? Would it be worth driving an hour every
to
morning
work every day?
Yeah. In order to have otherwise unlimited access.
Right.
But those are the things that I feel my entire life I've always tried to solve. It's if I'm really into something, I built a rock climbing wall in the attic of my home while we were
Right.
super into rock climbing, because it was
Right.
like, I want to be able to rock climb even if it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And obviously the gym's not going to let me in.
Yeah.
You know, and so I need to solve this somehow.
Right.
And so this is the way that, like, whenever I find something that I love, I'm like, I have to find a way to always have access to it. And
Right.
so that's where I found myself thinking about for the past several days. I'm like,
Well, let me ask this: how often do you use the rock climbing?
well, when I was climbing, I used it very frequently.
Yeah.
Fairly frequently. With the only issue being that I was really bad at setting routes for
Okay,
myself,
sure.
because, like, you know, you would get up there and the whole idea would be like, you know, you try to like make like a challenging route, but then, like, even like while you were like testing it, it was like, well, I need to be able to do it to make sure I can do it. And then it was like, wait a second, but then if I know I can do it, then I just know I can do it.
It's not that challenging. Yeah.
Right.
Right. And it's like an enormous amount of work to set the route.
Yes.
And then even if you do it, and even if you make it a little bit, even if you find a way to make it a little challenging, and then you complete it, then it's like, well, now I did it.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but yes, that was like my big problem after like leaving jet skis. I was like, how do I have jet skis in my life more?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's jet ski rental places at Smith Mountain Lake where you
That's a
can
good
do
point.
the exact same thing.
Even closer to home too.
Even closer. Yeah, you don't have to be at the beach to do the jet skis.
This is a good point. All right, I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
There
Yeah.
is that. I don't know. I feel like I had something else to say, and now I totally lost it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today is validation.
Oh.
I know this is like,
Okay.
like completely
Wow, all
like
right.
left-hand term. So okay, it's sort of on the heels of last week's conversation again about the catastrophizing stuff, which I think has just been on my mind a bunch, because I was like, maybe, okay, if I'm doing this all the time and I can like really regulate it, like maybe it'll like help lessen my overall anxiety, because, you know, if you're constantly thinking about like the worst thing that can come from a situation, like, for one, I then also find myself fearing that I'm like going to manifest that negative outcome.
Oh, right. Oh, you know what? I just remembered what I was going to say.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay, because this is sort of in that vein. So you asked, like, did I feel like this is just a vacation thing, or would I like, am I trying to get jet skis now?
Right.
And I felt like it was so much fun while we were doing it, but like in the back of my mind, there was this sort of like, you know, whenever we go skiing, we've sort of developed this rule that the second to last run should actually be the last run.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, like if you finish and you're like, and you're all standing at the top of the mountain and you're looking at the clock and you're like, do you think we have time for one more? Like, don't do it. Just like you just did, like, don't do one more. Like, just finish there, because right now everyone's standing at the top and no one is hurt.
Yes.
Like, just leave now. You all already had a great day. That one more run isn't going to change anything, and you're all definitely healthy right now. So there was definitely like a sense of like, well, we've got like, I think you and me and Beth, I think, were sort of like, there was like a line where the no wake zone ended, and we sort of like had 10 minutes left, and we were sort of floating right around there, and it was like, well, what could we do for 10 more minutes? And I was like, oh, we could probably just shoot down there again and shoot back again, you know, we'll go let it rip one or two more times. And like, once we were in that zone, I was like, we're inside of the last run rule.
Right.
It was like, should we, like, we definitely have 10 more minutes, and we paid for 60 minutes, and this would be giving up like, a sizable percentage of the time we paid for, and it is so much fun. So yeah, let's just go run it down there. But there was like a part of me that was like, okay, we got off and no one got hurt, you know?
Right.
That was great. Like, I mean, we all had a blast. It was good, but there was part of me that's like, if we get hurt right now, like we can get out free right now. We're definitely good.
Right.
But obviously we all survived and no one got hurt, but
Everything
like
was fine.
there was that like sense of relief that was like, okay, no one had really any experience doing it. We all managed to go completely full throttle and no one crashed or anything. No one got hurt. We're all great, but like we're clear.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right though, because I do feel like it was those last few minutes, and I was like, you know what? I feel like I've been holding back the whole time. Like, maybe I should try those S turns.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, because there's also that party that's like, what if this is only a vacation thing? That means I'm not gonna, get to try the S turns again until maybe next year.
Right.
In which case I'll have to spend another 50 minutes building my confidence back up just to even try it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. It was the thing I kept coming back to, which was and I was observing Addie having like a little bit of this like over the week where it seemed like she would like see fun happening with the other kids, and it was like she like wanted to go and be involved with it, but it was almost like she had like a little bit of shyness, a little bit of hesitation. It was kind of like like maybe I could like walk over and like I'll just like I'll dip my hand in the water and be like, okay, everything's fine. Maybe I'll come back and like I'll put like a leg in or something. But it reminded me so much of middle school dances. I have no idea whether or not this would relate to you or not, but like I remember when you're in middle school, there weren't even dances, they called them like socials, but they would have like like the local radio station come out and like they were like DJing and they like play music, and they usually had like a bouncy castle.
I remember this is you guys had Code Word Apple.
Yes,
where you would go try to destroy the bouncy castle. You had socials. Because your middle school dances were different from mine because we went to different middle schools.
Yes.
So we had Y dances.
Y dances.
Y dances where you'd go to the YMCA, and like unlike this like if you were in 6th grade, you could go twice a month. There were 2 Fridays a month where you could go do this, and I think if you were in 7th and 8th, it was once a month. But it was popping. Literally everyone was there.
Right, it was like a line around the building.
It was really a big deal, and it was off. It wasn't at school. It was at the Y. So there's a lot more freedom happening.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But at these events, the thing that I would always find is that like I think on some level it's like setting up for what will eventually be like homecoming or prom, like where it's like a dance, but like nobody's wearing like dresses or suits or anything.
Right,
like
you're
that.
just there in your regular clothes.
Right,
yeah.
like whatever you wore to school that day, you just like stayed afterwards, and now you're doing this thing. But what would always happen without fail is that like they might run until like 7:30 at night or something, and the whole time everybody would be there, everybody just like standing around like in like little pockets in the corner and stuff like that, and like nobody would actually be dancing even though the music was playing,
right? And
you could have been doing it the whole time. And then like I think that this is like probably like you've got like your like middle school crushes and stuff like that, and there's like those little moments where you're trying to like figure out how to communicate with someone who you might like or something.
Yeah.
And I feel like the whole time, there'd be like massive hesitancy from everyone. And then finally it would get to like that last like 15, 20 minutes, and everyone's just like, you know what?
It's now or never.
We should try those S turns before the time's over.
Mm-hmm.
And then like at that point in time, like everybody, the whole grade would go in and like all of a sudden be like dancing for like the last 15 minutes. You get like 3 songs of just pure bliss.
Right.
And it would be so much fun. And then it's over.
And then it's over.
And then you're like, oh man, I gotta remember this for next time. But then so much time passes that the next time it rolls around. Anyway, so I kept thinking that Addie was having this particular thing happen to her, which was that like it was like I could tell that she like really badly wanted to go and like play with the other kids or be brave enough to do the thing. And it was like, Addie, if you could do breakthrough, I know you'll be so happy that you did it. But it's also like you gotta let her work through it on her own time. Mm-hmm, but she was getting there. She was figuring it out. Another year, I think. It's gonna be great
for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so sort of to tie these ideas together a little bit, they're like, so coming into, the trip, there's like the worries about like, well, what if this goes wrong? Like, what if this happens? And like throughout the course of the week, a couple things like did come up, or like, we know like were issues or something. And it was really strange because like on the drive home, Allie was like, I'm surprised you're not like upset about this. And I was like, it's weird because it's like I was worried this would happen, and it did happen, but now I feel validated. Like I almost feel like my concerns were like rewarded by being correct.
Correct about what?
Just about like some chaos that it ensued on the trip.
Okay.
Yeah, just like some like little things that were like askew or something like that. I was like I was like really worried about that, and it was like I don't know if it's just because like I was worried something would happen and then it did happen, and like maybe I feel like good that my instincts were correct, but this goes back to I think I like a little sentiment. It's like I've seen like a cartoon of this before, but it's like if you expect all the worst case scenarios, then even if the worst case scenario happens, then at the very least you were right. And I was like, I hate how much validation means to me. Like it was like I was right, not about something positive, but I was still right about it.
Right.
And it's like that is comforting in a way that I don't want it to be.
Right. That's like in the movie, like have you seen The Big Short?
Yes.
Yeah, the guys who bet on it are like so happy when it finally pays off, and then like Brad Pitt's character is like, you realize what you're celebrating right now?
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like, you're celebrating the collapse of the American economy, and you're like one of 5 people who just called it right. So good for you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's like being able to call the bad thing happening is financially good for a very, 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 very small group of people, and pretty much terrible for everybody else involved.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like that's like a yeah. But so anyway, I mean, I think it's a weird one because I definitely find myself like struggling maybe with like that craving for validation. Do you have this ever at all?
Sure.
Like,
I think everyone craves validation of some kind. Yeah.
Right. Yes. This is like the thing. I remember. I think while we were still doing the vlogging, there was like one day in particular where we started the episode. We're being like, yeah, we had couples counseling this morning and blah blah blah, and like a whole slew of comments came through and like, oh my god, been an announcer in couples counseling. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it was like, no. It's just we're just being like preemptive. We're just trying to like take steps to like make sure that we're. It's like having like a physical done or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
For the relationship, it's like let's go and like make sure we like work through these things. But one of the things that we talked about in the sessions for me in particular, and I don't mind sharing this, is just sort of like that. I walked in and I was like, all right, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna be able to like tell this person, like this mediator, like Allie, I need more validation like inside of the relationship, and like this guy is gonna help us figure out how to achieve that.
Yeah.
And we walked in, and I remember he was like, all right, we're not gonna talk to Allie for a second. We're gonna focus on you. Why do you need validation? And he was like, she doesn't need to provide you with validation. Why do you need validation? It's like, it's not her responsibility. And I was like, wait, what? This is backfiring on me. What do you mean? But I thought it was so interesting because I remember walking out of that feeling like so shell shocked because I was like, why do I want this so badly?
Oh.
But I can't tell if that's like a highly relatable thing or if that's just something that is particularly like locked into like my own way of thinking about the world.
Right.
Like, yeah. So that was mostly what it came down to. Is I was like, I was driving home and I was like, oh man, why am I okay? Like, I'm glad that I'm okay. And now this is the dilemma. I was like, I was glad that I was okay. I was glad that I wasn't like upset about something. I was like, but the reason is because the thing I worried would happen, and it just meant that I was right.
Right. So you were that's why you were okay?
Yes.
Because you like correctly predicted it?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, well, this is like they're like competing things. It's like, oh, I feel good. The bad thing happened.
Right.
Wait.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be better if the bad thing didn't happen? It'd be like, it'd be better, but I would have been wrong. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Can't have that.
No.
Or maybe you can.
Yeah,
anyway,
you can. Well, it's such a tricky question because there's like so many forms of like validation, and it sounds like you're struggling with some sort of like self-validation rather than like maybe an external validation or something.
Certainly is that. Yeah, I think probably there's something like where if you spend all of your time worried that something bad is going to happen, and this is why I was trying to really focus on this in the past week, but if you spend all of your time expecting something bad to happen, then it's like that like Newt Scamander quote. It's like the worrying just means you suffer twice.
Right. It's like look, if the bad thing happens, you're going to suffer no matter what. And if you're just worried about it and then it happens, then you were suffering beforehand and you were suffering, and it's not like
Right. Yes. And so I think that's what it comes down to. It's like a cathartic kind of like I don't even know. It's like you're like, oh, it's painful, but at least I read the signs. And so I think that maybe that's a piece of it, though, is that it's like when you're going through life and you are worried about things, it's like what you're trying to test is your instincts. Like when people are like, oh, you got to trust your gut on this one.
Right.
Like that's always one of those things where I'm like, I never know when to trust my gut. I'm not even sure if I know what my gut sending me a message like looks like or feels like. Mm-hmm. Do you have like gut instincts on things ever? Like,
actually, I'm gonna try. I think I've talked about this before, and I guess yes, sometimes. But I think sometimes when like just on like a low stakes level, this often happens to me with like Pokemon cards.
Okay.
A lot of times.
I love low stakes level. That's a great place to tell it.
Great. Yeah. So like there'll be often times when I will like read a card or something, or like see like a combo or think like, I bet this would be pretty good right now. But then like, I watch a bunch of like YouTube videos all the time. I'm like, I listen to podcasts about it and stuff. And like, no one at like the top level is like running this thing or something.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so they are probably right because they are way better at the game than me. So probably since they're not running it, I shouldn't run it because clearly if they're better than me and they're not running it, they like don't consider this good, or whatever. So it's like you'll read it and you'll be like, okay, you know what? I'm not even gonna try this because clearly it's not good. And then you'll fast forward like 2 weeks or something, and like a new regional tournament will have new results or something, and they'll go through the list and be like, "Ooh, I love that like spicy card right here," and it's like that's the card. Like it's like I thought I was there. I had it. I arrived there myself, and I talked myself out of it. Like why did I do that? Like it right there, like, so it's like one of those things where it's like I had an idea and I didn't trust my instincts because I just assumed other people knew better, and then someone else also figured it out and now they're succeeding. And I'm like, man, why didn't I just?
Yes, you're right. And I mean, but like, I think that's another one of those instances though where it's like does that help you feed that gut instinct in the future? So like if you're able to like then press forward and you're like another situation where you're like, you know what, nobody's playing this, and I was right about the last one even though it hadn't come to pass yet. Like do you feel like there's a greater likelihood in the future that if you're like, you know what, I was right last time, I might be right again this time.
Yeah.
Or like how much do you think like, or was that just chance? Was I just lucky? Like,
yeah, it certainly does that, because you're right. Like there is a momentary, like you should just trust your instincts, just do it. And then sure enough, like when you're going and like building the next time, you're like, And the weird thing is that like this stuff will affect my like even just testing or like playing or something.
Right.
It's like it hurts nobody, or it like why won't you even just try it out in your practice games online? Like, are you afraid the random person you don't know across from you is going to be like, what the heck is this guy doing? What an idiot.
Right.
Like that's not a thing. That's not a thing at all. And it's like, even if they thought that, even if you made this completely random call that was terrible, like, so what?
Right.
Like there's nothing to lose from it except like one game of Pokemon, which you were testing to see if you had a good idea. And if you learned that you didn't, then that's what you were trying to learn. So
right.
It's like, why can't you internalize it? It's like a tricky thing. Or like, I think a very similar thing happened to me on Marvel Snap recently. There's up 12 cards decks, so it's very small.
Right. Okay.
I was playing what's called a move deck. And I was like, I'm feeling like, I don't know if I feel like this is good or not. So I just looked up like, what's a new deck you can build around this card, because they release like a new card every season or whatever. And like the first result popped up and it's got like 11 of the 12 cards in the same deck. And I'm like, yep, okay, well, I'll go ahead and make that one change, but clearly I was already onto it,
Yes, yeah.
I was like, yep. So yeah, all right.
No, but I think that's great, because my suspicion is that like when it comes down to it, like for your competitive card playing type stuff, is that like and I do think it's fascinating that for the most part it seems like winning decks of like the major regional tournaments or worlds or whatever end up being revealed to the general public. So like when I go back to like my Diablo days, like I remember like people would have figured out like the optimized builds for any specific character. They would go on and you could like literally just be like, okay, they said to use this helmet, so I'll use that helmet. This armor, so I'll use that armor. These boots, these gloves, like whatever. Like it all comes together, and as long as you're following the formula that everybody else has figured out how to optimize, then you have the best character.
Right.
However, you're in a game that is evolving so much faster than Diablo 2 did.
Right.
Which is to say that like at any point in time after any given tournament, it could be the case that the entire card list is published, so like which helmet to wear, which armor to wear, which boots, which gloves.
Yeah, it wasn't like every 3 months a brand new like 100 items was introduced into Diablo. It wasn't that. Yeah, they didn't go like, okay, clearly, like what happens, especially these days. Like I bet you in Diablo 4, this is the thing that happens, or who knows? I'm sure there are games where this happens, where like the developers will look at all the stats and be like, oh man, like 80% of people are wearing a Shaco right now. So
which is a helm.
Yeah, which is a helmet. So we're in the next patch, we want to try and diversify the pool so that people are being a little bit more creative. So we're just going to nerf the Shaco. And even though it used to give you +2 to all skills, now it's just going to give you +1 to all skills.
Yes.
And it'd be like, they would just make that update and everyone would go, rah, 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 but then they'd, you'd figure it out and everyone would change and adapt. And it forces the game to constantly be different.
And I think that back in its heyday, it was much more common for stuff like this to take place. Yeah. Like it was much more common for them to be like, everybody's kind of figured out how to do this like one thing, and it's pretty much impossible to beat them, and it's all everybody's running, so let's change it. But then after a certain point in time, the game was like 20 years old, and they were just like, well, people who are just playing at this point are just playing for nostalgia, so just let them go and use their Shaco.
Right, yeah.
And then that's fine at that point in time. But what I was going to say is that like for what you're doing, where the game is constantly evolving, and like the Pokemon trading card company is like putting out like new entire sets of cards every 3 months, without fail. It's like, in order to be that person who publishes their deck list because you won a regional tournament, almost at some point in time is going to mean that you're going to need to follow a gut instinct that goes beyond the grain enough to where it's like you have made a decision that other people have not yet considered, and that decision is what brought your unique flavor of gameplay to the top.
No, you're exactly right, because it is super uncommon for it to be like, okay, this guy ran these 60 cards and he won this tournament, and now everyone knows what those 60 cards are, and then next week those same 60 cards won again, and then next week the same 60 cards. It's not like once we know the 60, like tons of people will play that 60 for sure. Like people will use it and copy it and do it, and that's totally fine. That's a very common practice or whatever. But like it's rare for the same exact list to win over and over and over. Like normally it's like it might be very similar. It might be 57 of the same 60, but someone will have put in a new spice in there that is going to like give them the edge. They will have read it correctly and trusted themselves enough to run it this way instead of that way, and that's why they won.
Yeah, and so that's like what it comes down to with the gut instinct that I was asking basically, is like are you more inclined to follow your gut the more times that you've seen it like play out in a way that is satisfactory?
Right.
Because that is the thing that I feel like I struggle with the most, is that usually by the time I catch on to a pattern, I feel like I have caught it so far at the tail end of everything that trying to use the past data points to predict the future, it's almost like you've already watched it like peak and then fall, and now that it is falling, you're projecting on the basis of that upward trajectory, and now it's on the decline.
Right.
So now you doubled down on something that is actually going in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
And I feel like this ends up being the issue for me a lot of times when it comes to trusting my gut, is that it's like, okay, enough experience has taught me this is the right thing. And then it's like, it was the right thing 3 months ago.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like this has happened on numerous occasions. Like we always talk about with like Super Carlin Brothers, like merch is something that, and this is why we do like the quarterly merch for Patreon, because it's a much better way to predict like the appropriate volumes to order. Because when somebody is again purchasing merch for like a content creator, someone that they like, they're hoping that supports the creator. But if the creator has done a poor job of estimating how many things
to buy
in advance, then sometimes it can end up being like, well, thank you for being one of the people who bought the shirt, but we didn't buy enough shirts, or we bought way too many shirts.
Right.
That like the demand ends up having like a great disparity between it, and like whatever. And then I feel like this has happened to me on numerous occasions, where every single time my gut is absolutely certain that we have like nailed a piece of merchandise, it's like, nope. This one wasn't it.
This one went south.
This one was, but then sometimes I'm like, oh, this one will never work, and then it does, and you're like,
yeah.
It's like all I want to do is feed my gut knowledge that it can use to make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, and it keeps just being a scatter plot.
Yes, yeah. I'm so bad at it. But this is also, we were talking about this also on the drive home from the beach over the weekend. Alice and I were talking about test taking.
Yeah.
And she was like, I was always a good test taker because I always felt like I could just like deduce out, based on the other available answers.
Yeah.
And so I was like saying like, but I think that you're not giving yourself enough credit, because she's like, well, if I don't know the correct answer, I can whittle it down to like a 50-50 or something like that. And I'm like, but the knowledge of why other answers are incorrect also represents something that about the subject matter, even if you don't know the specific answer to the question.
One. Yeah,
exactly. So like, I think the example I gave is like, who was the third president of the United States? And like the answers might be like, Tyler Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and George Washington or something. And you might be able to be like, okay, well, like, I don't know which one is the third one, but I know that Lincoln was the 16th president. It's like, okay, so like then you have knowledge about,
right.
You have knowledge about Lincoln. It doesn't necessarily specific, like, do you know what I mean? Like it means
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Your presidential subject matter or like knowledge is still present. And that is still helping you make like a good decision. And like I feel like a lot of times whenever I failed at this, it was like I can't think of anything that I know about any of these presidents,
right?
To the point where I can even like wheedle it down to 3.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not sure at all anything. It's like okay, that's where it's like this was my problem, and maybe that just speaks to just underpreparedness for the particular examination.
I remember in 6th grade, I had a social studies teacher who just like she spent like half the class one day teaching us like multiple choice patterns to look for, like in tests. Like it doesn't matter what the subject is, like if all you had was the question, just like ways to narrow it down to try and help you get better tests. And like I used that information for the rest of my life. It was some of the most useful stuff ever, and it was just like it was amazingly always like true. So like one thing was that like if you really have no idea, choose the longest answer. Like the longest answer is usually is more often than not, if you have no idea, the right one.
Okay.
Like so sometimes you might have a sentence where it might have like a multiple choice and the A, B, C, and D are all like a sentence, and like B is like 2 sentences. It's like it's probably B.
Okay.
Like it was like that was one of her tips. One was that like you can always like sometimes like there was like the answers were clearly trying to trip you up, but normally like 2 of them would agree with each other in a way that the other 2 didn't. So you might have like, was the answer like George Washington, George Jefferson, Abe Lincoln, or James Madison? It's like, okay, these 2 both have George, so it's one of those.
Okay.
Like immediately, like clearly the other 2, like you're trying to trip me up with the last name, but in doing so, you've eliminated the other 2.
Right.
And that was one. One was just like always, if you really don't know and none of these other things are applying, it's like C is like just the most likely the one they landed on is the most random.
Sure. Yeah. See, I mean, because it's sort of like wrong answer.
Yeah.
Wrong answer. Right answer.
Wrong answer, right? Yeah. So C is always the best guess for a complete random one, because like the people making the test aren't completely random.
Sure.
And they will naturally gravitate towards C as the quote unquote most random answer. And then the other one was like, just make sure you read all the questions, because sometimes certain questions will answer other questions for you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it was like, oh wait, this one said that in the question, which means this is actually the right answer on this one.
Right.
And like just those tips were like, they got me so many more questions correct that I didn't know the answers to on tests later down the line.
Right.
And it was, I always thought that was just like, man, I was so lucky to have had this particular lesson on that one day.
Right. No, that's incredibly helpful to have that additional piece of information to like, then it's like, okay, all bets are off. I don't know. Let me start applying what I do know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, oh, question C. And it's also the longest. Like, that's a double whammy.
Yeah. Right. There you go. Ba-boom, ba-bam. There you go. Got that one right. So that was one of my testing. My wife has tried to call me twice, so I might need to go take a phone call real quick. But we can actually, we're sort of near the end, so maybe we'll just wrap it up.
Okay, are we okay?
I think we're okay. I think we're in a good spot.
Okay, all right. Well, there we go. So, guys, as ever, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Pod. Be sure to let us know if you have any test taking tips for us, because I feel like even though I don't have any real reasons to take any future examinations in my life that I'm aware of, I still harbor some like a small amount of like anxiety, and like I wish I was just better at it.
Absolutely.
Like, I definitely, even like the SATs, it's always like one of these like stamps on my life where I'm like I feel like I feel like I could have done better. I should have done better. Like, can you just go back and take the SATs as an adult? Can I?
Right? Yeah. Can you just sign up to do it?
Can I like refresh my score and just be like, oh yeah, I did way better now?
That would be amazing. That would be a fun challenge. That sounds like a vlog.
It does.
I retook the SATs. Here's how I did.
At 34, I bet I would do horrible.
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't remember anything about like the trigonometry.
Oh my gosh, no, I would need some serious refreshers for sure.
Some tutoring.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something to consider.
But I could take it seriously.
Yeah. I know. Like, properly, like go in and like I mean, that'd be interesting. Get like as a 34-year-old, could you ace the SATs?
Ooh.
Could you get 1,600 down? That'd be interesting to find out. Anyway, otherwise, have you ever ridden a jet ski? Let us know about your experiences. You can send all of your feedback to popcornculturepod@gmail.com. Also, if you were at all interested in still getting in on that Deneen Popcorn Culture coffee mug for the quarterly merch, we kind of touched on merch a little bit in today's episode. There are pictures of it that are finally available over on the Patreon. And if you're watching the video version, we'll also put one of those on screen so you can get a gander at what they look like. At this point, you would need to sign up for the annual quarterly merch membership in order to get in on the mug before the end of the month. But otherwise, and that's at patreon.com/popcornculture. But otherwise, guys, until next time,
pop.